Wow, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Wasn't super hard to get you to come on, and I'm glad about that. But obviously, everybody's schedule is kind of tight, and sounds like a busy time for you guys.
Well, we're finishing up we're kind of in the middle of our spring break, so we're doing a lot of in-district activities this time of year. And it's been kind of fun to be spending more time at home in the district.
And how long is your spring break?
Well, the Michigan Republicans are in control of the House this year, and so they decided we needed 3 weeks for a spring break instead of 2.
Okay, so it's a little bit longer period of time and more time to get back to your constituents and sort of table whatever issues you have at the Capitol for now.
Yep.
So most of the decent part of your adult life, married life, has been in Okemos.
Yeah. I have been in Meridian Township for, I think 35 years almost.
35 years, right. And you're still on Hamilton?
Yeah, you're going to tell everyone where I live.
No. I only know because you have the garden, right?
Yep.
And you raised a family there and are married and have done a significant amount of public service.
Yep.
in Meridian Township.
Yep, I sure have. And for those listeners out there, our kids went to school together. And Ben and Heidi were in a classroom together for a number of years.
So I think Ben is 96, he was born. So he's 28.
Yep.
28, it'll be 29 at the end of the year. So I assume your daughter's about the same age.
Yep.
But you come here and you're in the private sector mainly, and it looks like you were sort of in the height of the environmental era where, it was sort of the thing that was really top of mind when you're doing a real estate deal, right? Is to have somebody look at environmental contaminants and all that stuff, CERCLA and whatnot.
Yeah, so I came here like so many other people. I came here to go to school. I got my master's degree at MSU and had met my husband at University of Illinois, and he got hired up here. We were dating, so I thought, okay, I'll go to grad school there and see how it plays out. So here we are, married for 35 years, and I was working in the environmental consulting field, and at that time, we had a gas, 1 penny of the gas tax went into the underground storage tank fund. And Michigan was doing a phenomenal job of dealing with the legacy, the unfortunate part of the long manufacturing legacy that we've had, and doing a lot of cleanups. So I worked for a consulting firm. I traveled all over the state, analyzing, investigating spills, and looking at cleanups.
Early 90s kind of thing.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
And of course, I forgot to mention you're an Illini.
I am.
Fighting Illini. I've only been down there, I think, once. Was not a great fan of Illinois. Of course, they're all orange, and fortunately, Michigan State was a basketball game, and we beat them. But it's a Big Ten school, and it's obviously a little warmer there. And you decide to come up here, follow your husband, and graduate with a master's degree and make sort of maybe you didn't understand at the time, but it's been a lifelong commitment to this area.
Right. I didn't understand it at the time. In fact, I grew up in Chicago, and I have to laugh now, but the first 5 years I lived here, I begged my husband to get a different job because it was so cloudy here. And we moved here in the late 80s, and the restaurants were kind of terrible at that time. Mm-hmm. And I didn't like the nightlife, and
downtown.
and so I kind of begged him to get another job, and then as soon as I had our first child, I did not want to leave.
Yeah, that is one of the advantages of, especially in Okemos, right?
Right.
Such a good school system, such a good community.
Safe community,
Right.
wonderful people. And, of course, I've really grown to absolutely love it here.
And for some ungodly reason, you decide to get on the Zoning Board of Appeals.
I'm a sucker for the underdog, and I tripped and fell into local government. Something was happening in my neighborhood that I didn't like, and I went and I complained, and I was talking to the planning director at the township, and I said, where do they get these people? And he was pretty funny. Mark Kieselbach, he said, well, there's an application for public service in the lobby, and that's where we get those people from. So I went downstairs, I filled out the application, I handed it in, and about 4 months later, they called me up and asked me to serve. Not that many people want to serve on the Zoning Board of Appeals or the Planning Commission.
Which the two, I think, major boards for development in Meridian Township in most places are either the planning board or the zoning board, right?
Correct.
And especially in Meridian Township, where you have, correct me if I'm wrong, a significant amount of vacant land that often maybe somebody wants to upzone from residential or farming to commercial or multifamily.
Right, and that's what was happening at the time. The township board at that time was all Republican, and they were pretty much approving any requests they got and kind of ignoring the plan. And after I served on the zoning board, then I got put on the planning commission, and I served there for maybe a year. And got recruited to do something really unique. And that was run with a group of people. And we had Republicans and Democrats in our group. And we ran together on a slate. Right. We ran together, Republicans and Democrats working together for the residents. And that was my entree into elected politics.
Tell me what year that would have been.
That was in 2000.
Okay, so you spent a decent amount of time at the administrative level, probably knew the landscape and the players at Meridian Township, and maybe even developed a following.
Yep. I served on the township board there for 18 years. A decade of that was as treasurer. And really a great, all those experiences that I had in my life, traveling, my early experiences traveling all over the state, doing consulting work and looking at different contaminated sites, then combined with the 18 years of governmental service really put me in a great position to be able to continue serving the people in the legislature.
Tell me who was on that slate.
That was Bruce Hunting and Ann Wywoody. From the
Ann is a Democrat, right?
Yeah, and so is Bruce. And Susan McGillicuddy was the supervisor. She was a Republican.
Okay.
Steve Steyer was a Republican. And Pat Hagan ran for clerk as well. And I'm forgetting somebody. This is so embarrassing.
Was Andy Such on there or not?
So he and Mary Helmbrecht were on the board. And we had 6 people running, and 5 of us won. And Andy and Mary Helmbrecht got reelected, and everyone else got swept off. So then 4 years later, we ran with them because we had really formed a really good bipartisan working relationship.
Yeah, I think I was Mary Helmbrecht's treasurer for a while when she ran the first time as... Was she treasurer or clerk?
She was clerk, yes. Yeah, so you were treasurer of her campaign committee?
Yes, yeah.
Was that before or after you ran against me and lost?
Me?
Yeah.
Did I run against you?
Yeah, you did.
In 90?
No. I mean, it was like 2000
Oh no, I never
or
ran.
2004. Yes, you did. You had the bus
Yeah,
with
that was. Oh no, you might be right.
I am right.
Yes, I was thinking.
You had that trolley, the Cata
Yeah,
trolley with your blue billboard
yeah.
on it.
I don't know when that was.
I think it was 2004.
Yeah, maybe before that even. But yeah, I ran a sign campaign, but that's about all I did. Well, Ann Wywoody I knew was in that.
One of the trustees also, yes.
Yeah. And I think I ran as a Republican, but not on a slate.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you won.
I did.
You won. The good old days. Good memory. So a lot of changes in Meridian Township, for sure.
Yep.
And what do you think about the Meridian Mall?
Well, COVID has really, I think, accelerated a trend that was already happening where we have a big change in people's shopping habits and retail shopping habits. And a lot of young people were ordering things on Amazon and not going into brick and mortar stores. Then after COVID hit, everyone was relying on getting things that you needed mailed to you rather than going into a store. So every mall is struggling and looking. We need to community leaders need to find ways to adapt to that. And I think that the mall is doing a pretty good job. We've got a lot of experiences that are going into the space. So you have the launch trampoline place, and then you have High Caliber, which has the go-karts and the axe throwing, which is really fun. If you haven't done that, I
haven't. I was out at the mall a little over a month ago, and I went to the golf place to hit balls indoors. I was headed to Georgia, and I wanted to get some. I can't.
How did that go?
It was fine. I mean, they're pretty. It's like buying gas. If you go, most of these indoor ranges are the same, and that was nice. It was nice, but I just remember when I lived there. I lived over on Tacoma in the obviously like 98 to 2012 era. It was so easy to go to Home Depot or the Meridian Mall or any of those stores, and still be in a nice residence. And the Meridian Mall, was not only a social, place. I mean, you could go there and not find a parking spot.
Right.
And you'd see everybody, and it just, I don't know if it definitely will never be the same. And it was certainly a central figure for Meridian Township, what the surrounding businesses and restaurants. And
yes, it was a super attraction that created a regional shopping hub for the community. And it still is a regional shopping hub with Home Depot and Meijer and Walmart and Target.
Costco is technically, and I mean, it's in Meridian Township. It's not in that area, but it's still a significant area where people will drive decent amount of time for. But then you decide to follow in, is it Sam Singh's footsteps?
Yes.
So it was Gretchen,
Mark Meadows,
then Sam Singh, then you.
Yes.
A long line of Democrats.
Yes.
And before Gretchen, what is it, Lynn Jondal?
No, Laura Baird was in there.
Oh, Laura was in. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, so significant amount of.
I think Laura followed Lynn. The districts were pretty different then, though. It was kind of split up into two different districts, and the Hazlet had a Republican district, and Okemos had East Lansing, and they had a Democratic district.
And so, and Hazlitt's district probably included more to the east.
Yeah, in the north, yeah.
And so, you've seen a lot as a state rep for, what would it have been now, 12 years or more?
No, I'm in I'm starting my 7th year.
7th year, that's it. And
Yep.
you've done a lot so far, and you've seen a big change this last. How long were the Dems in control of your house?
Just one cycle, 2 terms.
Okay.
2 years.
Okay. And what is your take on the current political environment? Whether at the state level or at the local level?
It's funny, in 2000 when I ran in Meridian against that all Republican board, that was when Al Gore was on the ballot,
right.
and they had the hanging chads,
Right.
and the Supreme Court had to get in and get involved in the election, and people were so highly partisan at that time, and that's like nothing compared to how it is today. It's just so much more extreme, the differences between kind of the bases of the two parties, and then a huge amount of people in the middle that don't like talking about politics and don't like the tone and the tenor of what's happening. So unfortunately, the Republicans in the House right now pretty much are copying Trump's playbook and passed a budget that took $6 billion out of our education fund and zeroed out the DHHS budget, and acts like they want to disband the Department of Education here, like the Board of Education here, like what's happening in D.C.
Big difference between the Department of Ed at the federal level and what the state does for education at the state level. Would you agree?
I would agree.
A significant amount of school funding, whether you're a urban school or a school like Okemos or any school, gets a would you say the lion's share of their budget from the state?
They get a lot of money from the federal government as well, but your property taxes, probably half your property taxes in most areas that you're paying on real estate are going towards education, and then being redistributed out of the school aid fund. I saw yesterday or today the Economist had an article, and they talked about the tariffs and what's been happening in Washington as Ruination Day instead of Liberation Day, and unfortunately, I think that's where we're headed. Things. I've had some pretty unique experiences in my elective career. So when I first got elected treasurer, a full-time job in Meridian Township, the duties are to collect the taxes and invest surplus funds, while you're waiting during the year to spend the money, send the money out to the different entities, and be a voting member of the board. Well, I got elected in November of 2008, and right at the beginning of the Great Recession. And it was just terrible. It was absolutely terrible. Right. I was treasurer for a decade, and 7 years in a row, interest rates went down every single year to where they were, 0.1% interest rates. And we had to lay off 10% of our people at the township. And most of the money that you pay for taxes goes to people providing some kind of a service, whether
police and fire.
Yeah, whether it's a teacher or a police officer, firefighter, or a person, going out and checking your sewer lines. It's people providing services are what our government taxes go for. So that was a pretty unusual time to be treasurer. And then, of course, in the House, got elected, started serving in 2019, and then COVID hit. And so we have this, global pandemic. And what really struck me was I felt so fortunate when Biden got elected president because the steps he took gave us an amazing landing of the economy. And the reason that he knew what to do was because of what they didn't do enough of when he was vice president in 2008 with Obama being president. And so that perspective and you learn from your mistakes. Well, you're supposed to learn from your mistakes.
A lifetime of institutional knowledge and the way the system works and what you can accomplish.
Right. But now we have a different person in charge who
not just one person, but
is a billionaire.
Yeah.
And I don't think really cares and is Michigan's in a terrible spot with these tariffs. We're probably the worst state in the nation to feel the effects of them because we're the number 2 trading partner in the U.S. with Canada, behind Illinois, and we're the number 2 trading partner with Mexico, behind Texas. But we also have 300 specialty crops in our ag sector. And so we do a lot of exporting, and the tariffs are unleashing, retaliatory tariffs and trade wars that will just decimate our farmers, the cherry farmers.
I don't want to get too deep into that, but just pick a crop, for example. One of Michigan's primary crops would be what?
Cherries.
Okay, and when we ship those to pick like Canada or Mexico or what, they're gonna add a
export,
tariff.
And so they won't. No one will import them. The other thing in ag that is under-recognized is that we get a lot of fertilizer from Canada. Everyone in the world gets fertilizer from Canada. Mm-hmm. They control 80% of the potash deposits. And so all of the raw materials that go into agriculture are going to be more expensive. And the cherry farmers have been really struggling because of the Turkish imports of tart cherries. So
meaning they're able to import those at a cheaper price
yes,
than what we can produce.
And flood the market, and then the price isn't high enough. Now, okay, if there's a tariff on Turkey cherries, then that would, negate that. But the problem with all these tariffs is that, just like you and I, you and every other person shops online and orders things, we have a global economy. And to think that we're going to bring everything back to the U.S. and when you snap your fingers, we haven't been making clothes here for a really long time. And you don't build a factory just because you put a tax on something. So there's a lot of signs that we're headed towards a recession again. The stock market today is in terrible turmoil.
Well, yeah, I mean, we often judge how we're doing by the stock market, and it's not necessarily indicative of how we're actually doing, right? People will look at their 401k and the stock market and, may not have a job, but people say, right, we could be in high unemployment, but people say, well, look at the stock market. I mean, the stock market is, so, True. I mean, it's doing bad, it's reactionary, and, the stock market is usually the first thing to react to the tariffs. We'll see over.
Right. But consumer goods are really high also.
Yeah.
Every day groceries are really, really high priced right now. Meat is really expensive, and none of that is going to get better right now. I think everything is probably going to be worse.
I mean, I try not to have too much of an opinion about it because it's such a polarizing view on everything, and it's not that I'm passive. It's fact of the matter is that there was an election.
Right.
And, the guy that got the most votes looks like he won. I mean, no, but the Democrats aren't challenging it.
Right.
And, you're a tried and true Democrat, right?
Yep.
For a long time.
Lifelong.
Yeah. And
I grew up in a union household, Andrew.
Yeah, so how do you, obviously you've been in the minority for a long time in a state that one could say is, for the most part, blue at the state level, and certainly in your district. How do you overcome, what looks like a trend, whatever your policies are,
I think we really need to go back to what happened in 2000, where we work with each other and work together. I was really hopeful that was going to happen during COVID. I thought, oh, this is it. We're going to actually break down our political boundaries and get together and work together, but it didn't.
That was
Unfortunately, it didn't happen.
As much of a lightning rod as anything,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And for a lot, I mean, there could be some blame. This is a bad term on both sides, maybe, and I'm not trying to take the middle of the road, but there are some good arguments that we should have never closed as much as we did, and there's some good arguments that we probably saved a lot of lives by closing. And so depending on your perspective or point of view, you can see why you're not going to convince the other side. But how have Democrats, who seem to have significant voting power, not been able to capture, the position of so many people. And I think if from Democrats, you would probably say most of the people that are staunch Republicans, the policies of the Democrats would probably benefit them the most.
I don't know. It's something that I've been immersed in, obviously, for most of my working career as an adult, and yet it's still something that befuddles me, because you can't get into other people's heads. And I think the social media has really done a disservice to the nation in terms of isolating people and making this political divide be so much greater than it needs to be. It doesn't do us any good, and both parties will propose something, and then when they're in minority, and then when they get majority, not do it, and then the other party proposes it, even though they could have done it while they were in power and they didn't, and pointing fingers at each other and like political gamesmanship and that kind of stuff. And I think your average person probably really wants us to work together and stop doing that.
The one thing about social media is you can see the messages that you want to see,
right,
exponentially more, more often than normal. I mean, the algorithm, and all you have to do is look at one rooster saying somebody's name, and the next thing you know, you get every other reel is a rooster yelling at, and the same is true with politics, right?
Correct. Yes.
So now all of a sudden, you're only seeing a certain point of view, and it either is echoing what you want to see, or it's affirming you believe something else. I don't know, but
right. And I think it's so anonymous for a lot of people that they feel. Some people feel like they can say anything, and you're just typing it on your phone or on your tablet or on your laptop, and it can be funny to people, but then other people receiving those messages, it's not funny. You look at kids being bullied or adults being bullied, women being bullied. Oh my goodness, women in elected office have the most foul, horrible social media messages that get sent to them and emails and things like that. I was talking to the security people I think it was actually for the Attorney General. It was after the kidnapping thing had been going on. And the security guy said that with the 3 women in the top offices, that there were more death threats to all of them in the first 3 months than there had been in the entire 4-year term of the previous male office holders.
I mean, and that's an amazing, not only an amazing number in a bad way, but obviously a significant amount of resources have to go into, at least investigating it and making sure security is there.
Right.
And yet, to their credit, they seem to be able to carry out their jobs without a bit of, fear or intimidation. I was somewhat critical of Gretchen when she called me right after they sort of announced the arrests on the kidnapping, and I was like, Governor, I would see you walking around the neighborhood. If I would have known that there were people out trying to get you, I might have just kept walking. But, she still was able to do it in a, pretty regular manner where she's out and about. And that's, most people, don't understand having a threat put on them, and I'm certain if there's, sometimes you see some threats and you say, yeah, that's no big deal. But, if you see more than a handful or 10 or 15 or, this kidnapping plot, you can really see how it could impact you. And best I can tell, it hasn't impacted the 3 of them.
It's certainly impacted them and impacted their children who are, get drawn into it.
Yeah.
And as a mother in the political environment, your kids get drawn into it because it's your job, but they live with you. They're in your family.
Yeah, I'm saying
they're vulnerable too.
As far as what you see and they're doing their job and carrying it out and appearing publicly and engaging in speeches and doing the jobs that they have to do. If you didn't know about that other side of them, that's
right. And you might think that it seems like they're doing everything normally, but the part about the resources is real. There's snipers on the top of all the roofs around when they're out there talking outside, and I mean there's a lot of guns in this world.
So Michigan goes Republican for presidential, right?
Yep.
But we have, 3, we have the Attorney General, the Secretary of State, and the Governor are Dems, right? I don't know if we've had a more aligned Michigan Supreme Court, but their opinions seem to come out in a 5-1 or 4-2, I mean, really, if you look at the policy body of government, which is our Supreme Court, they seem to be fairly well aligned, and I think, do we just have one male, Zara? Oh, we have Richard Bernstein. Yeah, but fairly well aligned, and so what that sort of seems somewhat diametrically opposed.
But if you look through history, we flip and we flop all the time, right?
And we have 2 Democratic senators, right?
Yes.
So, what is that? And in a close race, Senator Slotkin won against a well-backed, well-financed, opponent, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, what does that tell you? Is it the message or the messenger?
I think we're a purple state, and the Dems were able to take control of the Senate because we had fair lines for the first time ever. But then we elected Trump again. So
Right.
people are fickle. The good thing is more people are voting, and I think that's really a positive.
Right. We do get a lot of people out there voting, and there's certainly been the subject of more animosity between people, between the voters, and whether there was whether the voting works or whether there's a
Our
conspiracy.
system has worked really, really well. I think it's designed for the people, by the people, and it's your neighbors who are the election workers, and people need to really remember that.
I'm of the opinion that every election is more secure than the last.
I would agree with you.
Yeah, and obviously, I wasn't around, but we know of some of the things in the early '60s that happened in Chicago, and we see the picture of I think it was LBJ with the ballot box, whatever, 59 or whatever, when he was elected, and those kinds of things occurred on whatever you want to call it, whatever level you want to say that, whether that's a big level or a small level, but every year we've worked, I think, hard. It's not perfect, but it's we're getting better, and I would say that when Biden won, it was probably the most secure election we've ever had. There may have been small pockets of election issues, may have been called fraud, but overall, and I think when Trump won, whether you like it or not, it was probably probably the most secure, and we continue to work at it. My issue is, the only real fraud is if you have 30% of the total population
voting.
Is it really? Is that the big fraud? Is that the big fraud? But I think we've done things
right
to allow. We don't. You can vote over a period of time. You don't have to vote on a single day, and so
right. And the voters did that for us, right? The voters, not politicians, and the voting groups of nonpartisan groups put that in and gave everyone the right to cast an absentee ballot, and I think that's been wildly popular and will continue to grow in popularity and make it more convenient for people to kind of think about who they're voting for, take more time, and I think that's a good thing.
Where do you see our next governor's race going?
I think that with who's out there right now and the conditions that we have right now, I think it's going to be a lot like 2018 and the 2 years after Trump was elected. I think it's probably going to be a Trump post-Trump 2.0 midterm where we see a lot of Democrats get elected, and depending on what he does, probably a lot of women elected again. A lot of people came forward, myself included, and decided to run because of his presidency and the things that he stands for. And so I would expect that we're probably going to see some of that again.
And how do you see the governor's race panning out, or don't you feel comfortable commenting on it?
I think Benson is the clear leader at this point. And
what do you think about Dugan's?
Spoiler.
Yeah.
I mean, why is he running as an independent? He couldn't beat her in a primary. That's the only reason he's running as an independent. He isn't running as an independent because Trump won. He's running because he can't beat her in a primary.
And so, I mean, what's wrong with that if he wants to get on the ballot? I mean, presumably he's not a team player. I mean, I don't understand the logic. Maybe he can't beat her. I think she's a strong candidate, but I've supported her, so I'm not. You could find that on the record, but
right.
And I don't know Dugan very well. A lot of people that I know like him from the Detroit area, but I mean, if he feels like he can't beat her and he has a stronger way to run, I think there is some attraction to an independent running. I mean, there is some, especially in this.
But is he an independent?
I don't. I mean, hard to tell when you're a mayor. You know, can you truly be an independent when you're a mayor, and especially the mayor?
I think Jesse Ventura running as an independent was a lot different than Duggan running as an independent.
But do you think his intentions are to like undermine her so that a Republican wins, or that this is his best chance?
No, but that could be the effect of it.
Yeah,
that could be the effect. You know, he can't beat her in a horse race, and so he's going to run as an independent, and he can't win that way either. But he's going to wreck it for the Democrats.
And how does he? And will he get on the ballot automatically as an independent?
No, he has to get the. How does that work? He has to get signatures.
Okay, and then he's on the ballot.
He has to get. I'm not sure how it works actually. You know,
because there's no primary,
right? Well, there could be
as an independent.
If another person ran as an independent.
Well, and so, tell me, who do you think the horses are on the Republican side? Don't tell me you don't know who they are. I mean, it's something you got to
Cox, I think.
I like Mike. Only he's a
lawyer, so you know him. You've worked with him for a long time, right?
Yeah, I know him, and we've had conversations. He answers my call when I call. I mean, we've done cases together. He was part of the U of M stuff on Anderson, and then there was some other cases that we've worked on, and he's probably more conservative than I am, but as a lawyer, I think he's
right. And I've known him too, being in the area, and working in the field I've been working in. A lot of things I didn't agree with him on, but in the Anderson case, he was supporting my package of bills for extending the statute of limitations for criminal sexual conduct, and worked with him a little bit after that session as well. So Tudor Dixon, I think, is, lining up to be another person running. And so we'll see who shakes out.
Right. There's some.
Oh, Swanson. Right.
We're a long ways away.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
A year? And is it not this year, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's 25. We're only 3 months in.
Yeah, so we got a whole year of primaries. But, I think the model, in my view, is what Gretchen did. And she started running, I think, 2 years in advance, and when she ran for governor, and she went every small town in the state of Michigan, and
all 83 counties.
Yeah, and she ran against a really strong Republican. Didn't she run against Bill Schuette for governor?
See, we can't even remember.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know that Bill Schuette has ever lost an election. He's held almost every elected office in the state of Michigan, including a Court of Appeals judge, and she ran, and I think that model was, I'm going to go from local political, Democratic office to the next, and I
don't think that was her plan. I mean, I can tell you that. I know it wasn't her plan in the beginning. She was on the ballot in 2000 running for the House seat that I hold now when I was on the ballot for the first time. And so, when you're running together, you meet people and you kind of get to know them. You see them
Gretchen's
at events.
very approachable.
Yeah, and she didn't have any aspirations of being governor when she was a state rep, or even a senator.
I'm talking about in 2016, whenever she started running, when she wasn't in office. She went from she ran a 2-year.
She ran a great campaign.
Right, and by the time, the election came around, she was in a really strong position because she had done that grassroots, I mean, you say door to door, it's not really door to door anymore, but it's
community to community.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And whoever can do that on the Republican side, probably could come out as a strong candidate, because right now it doesn't look like they have anybody that's really in an elective office, do they? Dugan, as an independent, is in an elected office, but...
Nesbitt.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So,
Do you know who he is?
I've seen stuff on social media.
Yeah. I don't think he's very well known outside of his district or Lansing insider politics. So
tell me, what is your agenda for this current term?
Believe it or not, I am hoping to work with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. I think we have a real opportunity to cover some ground and do some more work with the roads. Both sides of the aisle are wanting to do more to fix the roads.
Open them up.
And so, especially this time of year when you're driving around and they're all terrible from from winter, and there's deep potholes that pop open. So, hoping to do that. Working with my colleagues in that area. A little nervous about the budget, getting a lot of signs and signals that the Republicans aren't interested in following the law and having the budget ready by July 1st. So we'll see how that goes. But a couple other projects that I'm working on. I'll bring the statute of limitations back again.
And that has to do with the protecting survivors against sexual assaults and being unable to bring civil suits against people.
What it has to do with is recognizing that adult survivors of child sex abuse often do not disclose the crime until they're 50 years old. And recognizing that if we want to put away serial pedophiles and have consequences for organizations that covered up again and again a pedophile's work or a serial sexual predator's work, that we have to allow the survivors to come forward later than...
And litigate the claim, whether it's a criminal case or a civil case.
Correct. Last session, we extended the criminal statute of limitation for CSC 2 and 3 to age 42 from 28. So we made some progress on that front. But we really need to open up a revival window for survivors in order to hold the institutions accountable and to, by holding them accountable, get the change that we really need to protect people, especially children in a school setting.
And the Catholic Church is still protected?
No.
They're not.
I mean, yes, they're protected. They under my bills.
Yeah, with the current state of the law,
yes,
they still have protection pursuant to the statute of limitations, right?
Correct, because the statute of limitations has expired. And at that time, until 2018, it was 3 years after the crime, no matter how old you were.
Right.
3 years.
And just so it's clear, what the issue is that because people delay reporting, often what you're saying is until they're 50, it's long after the 3 years, and therefore the Catholic Church, in particular, I'm picking on them, but we know what their history is. They are immune from any of their past misconduct.
Yes.
And a lot of, when I say past, some of it isn't that old.
Right. And really it's every church that's out there has the same problem. And every organization that has access to children has unfortunately had the same problem. And that's because pedophiles alter their careers and choose their careers in order to be able to have opportunity to be near children. And we know that about pedophiles, and so we need to take further steps to protect children and young adults.
And you've been advocating that for
The whole time I've been here.
2018, certainly,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Post Nassar, I'm not saying Nassar was your, what your driving point, but that was sort of where it all came to light with many of us.
Right.
Right. And there are, as much as you would think that you wouldn't have any opposition, there are still people that oppose those bills, and you're not able to get enough movement or enough support to get them passed.
That's right. And it makes you wonder, who are they protecting?
Yeah, it's a good cause to be part of, I think. It's not something that you'll look back on your career and say, what did I do with my time?
Definitely
Right.
not. Definitely not. It's worth fighting for. It's something worth fighting for. Fighting for children who've been abused and are now adults is certainly something that we have the opportunity to fix things and to make it better. And in other states where they've passed these reforms, and Michigan isn't the only state that's experienced these cases, nor are we the only state that's enacted legislation, but we are in fact the worst state with the statute of limitations, because we're the only state that has a law that says you had access to justice based on the occupation of the abuser, and that was a Big Ten sports doctor. But it was written so narrowly that, 3 years later, we had another Big Ten sports doctor that it turned out had abused even more people. And those folks did not have the eligibility to come forward under our current laws.
I'm talking about the difference between the Nassar case and the Anderson case.
Yes.
Right. And, my involvement in those two cases is the sort of the notice provisions of the institution, in my opinion, were much worse in the Anderson case, although they were certainly bad in the Nassar case.
And that's one of the bills in the package. It's incredibly unreasonable that we would allow a university to say, for a sex crime, you have to notify us in writing within 6 months or 18 months. I forgot the time
Right.
period. If you plan to sue us,
Bring a client.
yet the way that these predators work is that many of the survivors were told that they weren't being abused, and if you think about who the victims were at MSU and at U of M, the human brain isn't fully formed until you're 25. So even though all our college students think they're adults at 18.
I know, and I'll tell you, I'm not really giving away of any secrets, but one of my clients said, I didn't even know what a hamstring was. She went to see the doctor for a pulled hamstring. I didn't even know what a hamstring was, and part of it obviously is there is a alpha mentality that your child is great and this is a great doctor and they're going to get him back on the field, and unfortunately, the value or the value that maybe the only reason why we were able to get the relief we got in that case is there were so many people that said almost the exact same thing. And you wonder if it would have been just one victim.
There would have been nothing.
And
there would have been nothing.
And it still would have been way too much. But when you look at what happened, and I'm sure you're aware of this, but
I think there were over 1,000.
And that Meridian Township police case, which, when I read that report, I was just sickened by the sort of past that he got with that. And, they've attempted to make amends, and so I'm not trying to pick on them. But, the fact that he was a doctor and he was given so much grace when,
right,
it just shouldn't have been the case. It was just traumatic.
And the same with Anderson, and that's the authority figure that they were. When you're a doctor or a police officer or a teacher, you're an authority figure, or a priest. You are an authority figure, and your prominence in the community can really, impact the way people treat you. And, to see them, the criminals getting away with it over and over and over again, it's just so upsetting when you look at the carnage that they brought upon their victims. But also the institution's role in it. The institutions had a role, and they did a lot of covering up, and it's happened at many institutions, and that's why I really want the legislation to pass, because when you have that institutional accountability, that's when we get the real change that we need to protect people, because the insurance companies will demand that there be better protections, and they'll look, if you have someone going in, taking their clothes off in the doctor's office, is there another person in there, or in the dentist's office? Is there a person in there if you're using drugs that make the person, be vulnerable? Is somebody in there with them, protecting them?
Tell me that you changed the term limits.
You changed the term limits through the ballot.
I assume you voted for it.
I voted no to put it on the ballot.
Oh, you did?
Yep, I voted no to put it on the ballot.
But you have, tell me.
I have another 3 terms.
I
have 6 more years. So I'm in my 7th year as a state representative.
Okay.
I have chosen to serve 12 years in the House if I am elected again.
And then that means you can't run as a
senator, correct?
State senator,
correct.
Well, what's wrong with that?
Nothing.
I think stability is good. I think that
I think it's great. That isn't why I didn't vote to put it on the ballot, but
right. But you've done a pretty
I voted for the change.
Right, and so. Stability, I think, is good, and seeing people in this fresh face and the learning curve is a little bit less dramatic every 2 or 4 years for where you work.
Right.
And although lobbyists have a lot of influence, maybe they have a slightly less influence with somebody who's been there for 6 or 8 or 10 years, as opposed to 2 or 4 and.
Yeah, they have an important role to play in the legislature. They can serve as educators. They can help break down complicated, bills, and a good lobbyist, if you ask them who's against it and why, they'll tell you, and you tell them no. No is their second favorite word behind yes.
And then what's your plan after that? If you want
retirement. I'll probably retire after that.
Well, Diane Byram's still going, right?
Yeah, there was a time when my husband wanted me to run for the MSU board.
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
I don't know. It's a ways away, so I'm not gonna.
Better to get appointed.
Yeah, I'm not gonna look at that right now. I'm focused on forming bipartisan relationships, because we're going to be around for another 6 years, and this is the first since term limits changed. This is the first term that any of us have been there longer than 6 years in the House. So the roads problem is our problem, right? We can't keep kicking the can down the road, because we're still going to be there.
Well, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah,
the infrastructure,
it is, and that's a benefit of having longer time in the legislature.
Presumably, that's not a Republican or a Democratic issue. It's a everybody issue, right?
Everybody who drives or rides on the roads. Right. Yes.
Well, this has been a great hour, and you're definitely in the top A list. I appreciate all your commentary.
Well, thank you so much
Thanks
for
for
having
coming
me.
on.
It's been fun. It's a good environment you got here. I look forward to tuning in and
Should be about a week, I think.
hearing all the folks that you get coming on. And
We had Andy Shore on.
Oh, great.
Yeah, can you fix downtown Lansing?
I can't fix everything.
We got to bring the state employees back to work. We got to bring them back to the office. I mean,
Why don't you run for governor?
No,
and then you can
run
make an executive order.
I got run from public office, not for. Anyway.
Run from. I like that. That's funny. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me on.